They locked themselves inside that room because fear had completely taken over them. And even after everything they had seen, the miracles, the resurrection, the empty tomb, they still felt abandoned, exposed, and terrified of what was waiting outside those doors. Jerusalem was growing louder by the minute. The streets below were filled with tension, and every sound coming from outside made them wonder if they would be next. Jesus was gone, and in the middle of that fear, while nobody in that room knew what would happen next or how their story was supposed to continue, they heard it. A sound so powerful, so unnatural, that the entire room seemed to shake around them. Not thunder, not the wind, something they could never explain. And the moment that sound filled the room, fear lost its power forever. For days, they had been hiding with questions nobody could answer, replaying every moment they had lived with Jesus, while trying to understand why they still felt so weak after witnessing something the world had never seen before. Because even though the tomb was empty, their hearts still weren't. They remembered the miracles. They remembered his voice. They remembered watching him ascend into heaven. But after the silence returned, fear slowly came back with it. And maybe that feeling is more familiar than people want to admit, because sometimes God can move in your life, answer your prayers, save you from something that should have destroyed you, and you still find yourself lying awake at night wondering why you feel so alone. That room in Jerusalem was filled with people who believed in God, but still felt afraid. People who wanted peace, but couldn't quiet their minds. People who were waiting for something to change, even if they didn't know what they were waiting for anymore. And then, the sound came again. Not outside the building, inside it. What entered that room wasn't fear, it was presence. And what makes this moment so powerful is that God didn't choose fearless people to carry his message into the world. He chose exhausted people, people who had doubted, people who had panicked, people who had already locked the doors because they believed fear was stronger than faith. That's the part many people miss about Pentecost. The miracle wasn't just the sound from heaven. The miracle was who it transformed. Because the same people hiding in silence suddenly walked into the streets with the courage that made no human sense. Only moments earlier, they were afraid to even be seen. Now, they were speaking openly in front of crowds from every nation standing in Jerusalem. And somehow, every person listening could understand them in their own language. Parthians, Egyptians, Romans, visitors from places they had never even traveled to. Different languages, different backgrounds, different stories. Yet somehow, every single person heard the same message. And for the first time, something became painfully clear. God was no longer moving through locked rooms, temples, or distant signs. He was moving through ordinary people, not perfect people, not powerful people, ordinary people who had once believed they were too broken, too afraid, or too unworthy to be used by him. Which means Pentecost was never only about what happened in that room. It was about what happened after they walked out of it. Because before that day, fear had been controlling every decision they made. Fear kept them silent. Fear kept them hidden. Fear convinced them that surviving was safer than being seen. But after that sound from heaven filled the room, something inside them changed in a way nobody could deny. The fear didn't disappear because the world suddenly became safe. The danger was still there. The crowds were still unpredictable. The pressure was still real. The possibility of suffering had not vanished overnight. What changed was the people, and that may be the most unexpected part of the entire story. God did not remove them from the storm. He met them inside it. That's why Pentecost still matters today, even to people who feel far from God, exhausted by life, or trapped inside battles nobody else can see. Because there are still people walking around with locked doors inside their hearts. People smiling in public while privately carrying anxiety, grief, emptiness, shame, or the feeling that something inside them has gone silent. And sometimes the hardest part isn't pain. It's wondering if heaven still sees you while you're in it. But Pentecost reminds us that God has always moved toward fearful people, not away from them. Toward doubting people, toward tired people, toward people who thought their story had already fallen apart. And maybe the reason this story has survived for thousands of years is because deep down, People are still searching for the same thing those disciples were searching for in that room: peace, presence, and the feeling that they are not alone anymore. And maybe that's why this moment still speaks to people thousands of years later, because deep down, most people are not searching for more noise, more distraction, or another temporary escape. They're searching for the feeling that somebody in heaven still hears them, that they haven't been forgotten, that the silence in their life is not the end of their story. And Pentecost is the reminder that sometimes God enters the room when people least expect him to, not always with answers, not always with explanations, but with a presence powerful enough to change what fear had convinced them would never change. And maybe the reason that sound changed everything that day is because it was never only meant for them,